Well, welcome to the Personalization with Ninetail Bootcamp course, lesson number 5. I'm Marcelo Lund, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Today's lesson is how personalization and A/B testing work together, presented by Andy Kaiser, the CEO and founder of Ninetail. If you want to learn more about him, just watch the interview in the introduction section of this course on headlesscreator.com. With that said, Andy, welcome. Glad to have you back. I'm going to let you jump in and get started. And if anybody has any questions, put them in the comments and I'll ask you, Andy. It's all yours.
Thank you, Marcelo. And hi, everyone. Welcome to this new lesson, how personalization and A/B testing work together. And let's start. First of all, A/B testing, it's not the same as personalization, and personalization, it's not the same as A/B testing. And we will see why. First of all, what is A/B testing? And if we check, first of all, the definition of testing, testing is the process of using or trying something to see if it works, it's suitable, obeys the rules, etc. And if we think about the A/B testing related with this process of trying something and to validate it, A/B testing is a method of testing the effectiveness of two different versions of a design. This design could be a website, elements in a website, or an app, whatever it is, but you have more than one version, you have two versions which you compare. And as we have two versions, we have an original version. This original version is also known as the A version or the control version. And in A/B testing, we have also the B, which is the B version, which is known as the variant. And if we check, for example, some examples, is you can, for example, in a website, A/B test a headline like we have here. So in this case, the control group or the variant A has all-in-one employee performance management, and the variant, the B version, which we are testing, has HR software that helps you focus on your employees. This means that if we're going to test the variant, we also have to define a hypothesis why we're going to test this. This could be, for example, that we say like, okay, it's more important to speak about HR software than an all-in-one employee performance management. At the end, really, it's about having a hypothesis and testing this hypothesis. But it could be that we say that it's a difference in the image. So you can, for example, test different variants of an image. So in this case, what we see is we have the control group or the control version, which has one image, and the variant has another image. In this case, for example, we could say like the hypothesis would be that the image of one person works better than the image than two persons. Again, it's really about validating a hypothesis about which version works better. And in A/B testing, we also have what we call multivariate testing. And it's a similar way as we have with A/B testing, but instead of comparing just one variable, we compare the separately and in combination of different variables. So for example, we could have an image and we can have another image or a button and another button. And at the end, we combine these images and these buttons in different variables, and we find which is the best one or which works best. For example, in the previous example, we could have like this all-in-one employees performance management as one of the headlines, and also the image. And as we see, we have a variant 1, which is one combination, a variant 2, which is another combination, and a variant 3, which is another combination. And one important part in A/B testing, as we will see in the process, is really to test a conversion rate. And in this case, for example, we would have like this different variants, and perhaps variant 3 is the best performing one. And
Real
as
quick
I, yeah.
question for
Mhm.
you, Andy. Is there, and maybe you're going to cover this a little bit later, so if you are, that's great. But is there a best practice as to how many variants you should have?
Yeah, that's really the factor, and we will see it in the step three of the
Perfect.
process. But it's really the sample size. If we start out how to create A/B testing, or how to do A/B testing, the first step is really to analyze your data, and based on this analysis, you will form a hypothesis. So, for example, we could see in our data that the users who see a specific image convert better. So we could think about, like, okay, let's improve that image, or improve the headline with the image, whatever it is. But at the end, the most important part of an A/B test is you have an hypothesis and you want to validate this hypothesis. So to validate this hypothesis, you create a variant and you test that variant. And here is where it's really important to have a specific sample size and a specific time frame. If we speak about sample size, there are several calculators. You just have to Google sample size A/B testing calculator, and what these calculators do is they calculate based on your conversion rate uplift versus the initial conversion rate. What is the sample size needed to really detect statistically significant results? On the other hand, the time frame is also very important, because if we think about the behavior of our users, the behavior can completely change if it's a weekend or if it's a weekday. And usually, what I recommend is when you're doing a B test, to have a time frame at least of 2 weeks, so you can have the control of seasonality of 2 weekends. But of course, it also depends of the sample size, because if you have a website with just 10,000 or 5,000 visitors, you will need to have a longer time frame. And I have to say, that's one of the biggest challenges really with A/B testing, because for the evaluation of this hypothesis, or validation of the hypothesis, you really have to take in care topics like the sample size and the time frame. And sometimes you really need to have an A/B test running for several weeks, or even several months. Of course, I can say it from my experience. If you have millions, or you are working with millions of visitors, you can do even multiple A/B tests at the same time in just 2 weeks. And the last step of an A/B test is really evaluating the results. And here it's critical that when you evaluate the results, that you calculate the statistical significance. Because, as we said, A/B testing is really about validating the hypothesis, and it's based on statistics. So you need to find out if the differences you observe between the control group and the variant are really real, or it's just a luck thing, or it's like a random thing. In this case, there are also calculators to calculate the statistical significance. Also, the tools like Ninetale can show statistical significance. And the industry standard of statistical significance should be 95% when running an A/B test. This means that every result which is over 95%, it's valid. Sometimes, and this really depends of the case, you could have also statistical significant over 90% as an accepted result. At the end, really, it's about what you're testing. So the elements, what's the impact on the conversion rate, and based on that, you can decide if the statistical significance should be 95% or 90%. And as we have seen, A/B testing is about validating a hypothesis. So the whole process is starts with this hypothesis, and you validate this hypothesis. But in the case of personalization, it's different. It's not about validating the hypothesis. So let's first of all check what personalization is. And this is
Real
the
quick before we
Mhm.
jump into this, because one thing that intrigues me is I guess when you're introducing all these variances, I would assume you want to limit how many variances you introduce, because you may say, oh, the image is what made it respond better, right? But then it turned out that you changed the image and you also changed the time frame when you showed that image, and then you don't know if it was the time frame or the image, right? So would you, for the variant, would you recommend that it's not just the number of variants, but what you do in that variant to try to limit it, so then you know what is the
Yeah.
effect? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. I know what you mean, and that's one of the challenges really with A/B testing. A/B testing is something which should happen very controlled. So it's really A/B testing is like an experiment you are having like with a